Commissioners' work session meeting to order for Thursday, February 9th, 2023. The time is 7:48 PM. Roll call, Manager Falk.
Commissioner Stump,
Here.
Commissioner Atwood,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
virtually present.
Commissioner Wingren,
Here.
Commissioner Goss,
He's here.
Vice President Zona,
Here.
President Hagus.
Here.
Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If there are any citizens that would like to speak tonight, please come up and sign the book on the podium. We don't do one on the, we don't do it on the work session. Thank you. Okay, there's several citizens.
Ones that testified. Good. Let's just start and see what happens.
Eva Williams. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eva Williams. My address is 10540 Old Trail Road in North Huntingdon. And the reason I was here was because, well, I'm a North Huntingdon Township resident, but our business is located in downtown Irwin. And I'm here on behalf of the Irwin Business and Professional Association, Come Talk, Inc., Fight the Blight, and the Norwin Chamber of Commerce. As you probably all are well aware, Westmoreland County turns 250 years old this year. So these organizations were having a birthday party for Westmoreland County. And it is on Thursday, February 23rd. It is at Brandy's Basement. It's from 6 to 11. It's free of charge. It's family friendly. There will be free hors d'oeuvres. There will be cake. And George Washington will be there, and he will be handing out wooden teeth. So I would like to invite you all, and feel free to bring your family, your friends, and we would welcome every one of you. And if you would, I have invitations if I could come and pass them out. Oh, okay, good. And you're there too. There you go. And also, when you go back to your offices or wherever you may be during the day, feel free to invite your coworkers and your friends. You're welcome. And hope to see everybody there. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next citizen is Joe Walter.
Yes, I live at, my name is Joe Walter. I live at 2149 Pierce Street, North Huntington. And our road is just a total disaster. You can't drive on it. My understanding that you don't want to fix it. And I would just like to know why. That you just don't want to maintain that road.
Sir, would you give me the name of the road again, please?
Pierce Street,
Pierce.
P-I-E-R-C-E.
Pierce. P-I-E-R-C-E, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Is that all you wanted to ask, sir?
Well, I'd need that answer first, then I
Okay.
can.
We usually go through all the citizens, let all the citizens that signed up speak, and then we address the questions at the end. Okay? Do you have anything else?
No, can I get to speak after you answer that?
If you have another question after we respond to that, I would let you speak, correct?
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, sir. The next citizen is Tom Hempel.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm here basically, last month we were here on behalf of the celebration that North Huntington's having. Wow, this is just going to be a one big celebration year, isn't it, with Westmoreland County and North Huntington. So with that said, I'm just here as part of the committee. There again, I understand on the agenda is the budget for the 250th celebration. So there's a few of us here tonight. Just if there's any questions that the board might have for us, hopefully we can give you the answer and maybe go from there. That's all really I have. And as my normal, thank you all.
Thank you, Tom. And our last citizen that signed up is Bob Morgan.
Good evening. I'm Bob Morgan, North Huntington Township Advisory Committee member and also a resident of 871 Northeast Drive. I'm here to encourage the commissioners to hopefully fund above our budget what's already funded for the recreation above and beyond, so we can get this celebration throughout the whole year done, and just have open-minded of hopefully what Dan has presented. We could work with the budget he has presented to make it a festive event for the rest of the year. I thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other citizens would like to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, we had a complaint of the condition of Pierce Street. Assistant Manager Turley, would you be the best person to respond to that?
Yes, I have some knowledge of it, and Bob's done some work on this. This comes up occasionally. This street in particular comes up every so many years, but essentially it's a private road. The township doesn't own Pierce like we do a lot of most of the other streets. So it was never dedicated, we don't own it. It was never built to current standards to be a public street. So it's a private street owned by the residents that property abut the street. So it's been out there for a lot of years. It's been there a long time. And I think Rich has a good knowledge of it, where I guess at times Township has done some maintenance there, various things. There was a drain put in, but we always, talking with the solicitor a few years ago, we had to be a little bit careful that we're just doing basic maintenance to keep it passable and to salt the road, because it's not a township-owned road. And that's sort of where we ended up with this, is we'll fill in some holes and keep it passable and clear the road, but it's not a public road that we would take care of. We don't have an obligation to the road. It's just like any other private drive or private street. And there's about 100 of those in the township. And Bob at one time I guess it was about 5 years ago, did a cost estimate on, there's been some effort to make it a public road in the past. And frankly, some of the residents didn't cooperate with easements and right-of-way needs and some drainage needs and other things. So it never could get off the ground anyway. But there's a substantial cost too. I think 6 years ago it was around $250,000 to make it meet the standards of a township street, right? But somewhere in 200, it's going to be higher than that now. So it's just a real costly matter to bring into become a public street. It's a private street, and there are about 100 or so of these private streets in a township that we don't maintain and we don't have an obligation to. Even though in this particular case, we do some winter maintenance and we do some pothole filling, and I believe we clean some, there's one storm drain, I think, out there that gets cleaned. Be a question for Rich, but that's kind of the history of it. Essentially, it's a private street. It's not a township-owned road.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir. I'll let you respond to that if you have another question.
The maintenance that's been done on that road, you started and chipped it twice, and that road was asphalted once. So I don't see the problem where we can't get proper maintenance on it. He's telling me about a drain that was put in. It's clear at the end of Pierce, coming off of Morris. And that's the only drain that was put in on that road.
Okay, sir, as it was explained by our assistant manager, that is not a public road, it's a private road.
Why is it
So-
named Pierce Street?
Well, I think all the streets, all the roads in the township or all the roadways have to be named. But that is a private road, and as it was just explained, we do some small maintenance and some repairs on it to make it passable, but that's all we're required to do with that road.
We use asphalted our way. There's only 3 houses on that road, on that alleyway.
Okay. Well, I mean, you just heard his explanation, it's a private road, so,
And if they're gonna asphalt our way, why can't they asphalt Pierce Street?
I would chime in here and say our way is a public road. It was dedicated to the township, it's a public road.
Since when?
I'm not sure the date, but it's a public road.
I wish we had a better answer for you, sir, but that's about all we can tell you.
In other words, we still ain't getting nothing done.
No, it's a private road.
Now, wait a second, if I may. Mike just got done saying, and I'm not holding this against you, but they do winter maintenance, right? So, Mr. Walter, have we done the winter maintenance yet for Pearson? Please don't tell me it's a private road. I know that.
I would say winter maintenance is salting and plowing the road. I think he wants more than
That's why I'm
that.
asking for a formal definition of maintenance, please.
Well, we probably shouldn't be doing any of that, to be honest, but I think it goes back probably many years, and somebody got the township somewhere along the way to do some maintenance on some private roads. It's probably what Rich has a long history, and he may be a good person to fill in some of this. I think he did a few years ago at one of our meetings. We probably shouldn't, but I think this is where we ended up, that we'll clear the road for winter maintenance and fill in some holes and some basic stuff. If you start doing too much stuff, then you start to take ownership of it, and then the next complaint is it needs widened and you need the $250,000, and then the next private street wants to know why theirs is. The process is that you build it to the standard, and then we take it if it meets the standard. You don't give us a private road and then we fix it to the standard. That's okay. That's all right.
Okay, sir? Go
The
ahead.
only comment I would like to make is, if you have enough people living on that road, you could possibly get everybody together and form a maintenance agreement with everybody, and everybody chip in to fix the
What the hell are
road.
we paying taxes for?
Well, a private road, a property on a private road doesn't pay as much property taxes as one that's on a public road. That's how they are assessed, to my knowledge anyways, at the courthouse.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, work session discussion topics. Manager Falk.
Okay, item number 1, a joint municipal agreement with Manor Borough for a joint code appeals board. We do have a representative from Manor Borough here present. They did approach us to seek going into a joint municipal agreement. They're having a tough time filling their board, as well as we are one member shy. Are you want to come up, or does anybody have any questions?
I'm sorry, I'm Chuck Sherry. I'm on council at Manor Borough. And I think in the agenda, of course, it says code enforcement, but it's actually about the UCC, your appeal board.
Yeah, we had a typo. I
Yeah,
apologize.
okay. Our only issue is that, currently we're going through a COG, and we have their board, and there's been discussion for council to address the possibility that we may separate that agreement. And if we do, they're looking for another board to be able to handle that workload. And it's very tasking. The last one they had was 20 years ago. So we have very limited commercial. Anything that should be appealed commercial is going to go to L&I anyway. So it's probably not going to be there, but it is more on the idea that if you would entertain that it would be in our records to say that if a resident does want to appeal, they'll come to your board. That was a request they wanted.
This has become very fashionable. Communities are banding together because, as you indicate, it's hard to get people, members, to serve because they have to have certain qualifications. It's cost-effective to put a few communities together to try to put together such a UCC board. And then the appeals, and realistically, you don't get very many UCC appeals, maybe 1 or 2 a year at the most. So it's not an active board that you see like your zoning hearing board or planning commission every month. This is rare that they meet, but when they do meet, it's important. And I've seen other communities band together to form a regional UCC, and I think that's what you're suggesting.
It is because when the municipality adopts the UCC as their code, for their construction code, there's the rest that we have to do as well.
Yeah, you're required to have a board.
Exactly. And we don't have that, haven't looked to do it within the community, and it's a small bedroom community. So to get a few architects and engineers, I'm a developer myself, so I could do it, but it doesn't mean that we can fill that board and keep it consistent. And when they brought it to me actually last night, to come here tonight to discuss it with you, it was because it has come up just recently. So it's a thought, and nothing that you have to decide this evening, but that we'll send you just a letter as we progress with it. And as
I
we
think
do
what
it.
you're asking, are we willing to sit with them and work with them on this? I think that's what you really want to know.
Sure.
Yeah, excuse me, Bruce, per the MPC, to do this joint board, we would have to have an intergovernmental agreement with Manor Borough.
Right.
And to speak to the frequency of this board, I've been here 17 years, we've had 2 of these hearings. So
I agree. It's not active,
infrequent.
but when you need it, you better have it in place.
We need something more countywide. It would make sense. There could be potentially a quarterly meeting within the county.
So what you might want to do is have Harry meet with the Manor Borough officials to see how we can move this along.
Would we need, Solicitor Dice, would we need a motion to authorize the township manager to
Sure, it's appropriate. to-
work on getting
Yeah.
the agreement?
Why doesn't
before
somebody
the
make a
board?
motion to enter into negotiations with Manor Borough to set up a UCC board and all the attendant necessary ordinances that need to be put in place and agreements?
That'll be placed on the agenda for a vote next week. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
Manager Paul, how were we approached for this?
Their borough manager reached out to me and asked if we would be interested, and I put it on the agenda for the board to discuss.
Okay, so it was a phone call or a personal talk, I guess?
It was an email.
I would think that the board should get a copy of that. And when you say there was a typo on the agenda, so they're not enforcement officer, they're looking for the UCC board to cooperate, right?
That is correct.
Okay. That might have been cleared up if we saw the memo. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2 is sponsorship program for events. Previously, North Huntington Township did seek donors or sponsors to offset the cost for programs. I have a letter here dating back to 2009 when the township did it, and Commissioner Gray was the president of the board at that time. And also I found paperwork or pamphlets back in the day dating back to 2004 seeking sponsorships. So there's nothing really in place, but it has been a practice of the township to seek this. prior, or back in the day. So I generated with the help of Dan Miller and Jonathan Beskin, to do a draft sponsorship form. It's more formal. It states what the money is going to be used for, the events that are coming up, and things of that nature. So I do not believe there's any formal action that needs to be taken, but if there's any changes to this form that the board would like to see, they can let us know.
I have a question on this. So the checks, the donations are mailed into the township. It says made payable to North Huntington Township / sponsorship. That goes into the general fund under a certain line item?
Yes, that would go under the general fund for line item for program donations.
And then we would keep track of what it's earmarked for, whatever they have checked on here. If they want it going to the father-daughter dance, that money would be earmarked specifically just for that?
Correct. We can do that separately. As the forms come in, we can mark or keep track of what they want that money to be used for, or towards what event.
But it'll all be one line item and just sponsorship?
Correct, at this point in time, yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, the 250th celebration budget.
I just had a question on the sponsorship. Who will be responsible for the forms and sending them out?
It would be the Director of Parks and Recreation, Dan Miller, along with myself. But it would be the responsibility of Dan Miller, since that is his department.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 is the 250th celebration. Dan Miller did put together a budget of $150,000 for the celebration. If you look in your packet, I did do a draft budget revision of the request of $150,000, and also Bob Robertson's request for the milling and paving and the MS4 project. So at the end of the day, with some budget revisions, we would only have to pull or transfer $476,000 out of the reserve fund to help pay for the festival, for the MS4 project, for the paving and paving program for this year. $150,000, I think, is a great investment for the community, to showcase what North Huntington Township has to provide. What we would get in return, we'll do the sponsorships forms to try to collect some money from the businesses to help fund these programs. Also, these visitors will be coming into our municipality. They'll be eating, shopping, buying gas, you name it, whatever. We're going to be able to showcase our municipality. And so they put together a educated guess of the budget, no different than me presenting a budget to you at the end of the year. Is there any questions regarding that?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to make a comment. I would like us to get competitive bids from businesses in the township first. And if we're not able to get competitive bids from businesses in the township, then reach beyond that, so that we're supporting North Huntington businesses.
Sure.
I'd like to make a comment on it too. When we look at the Dan Miller's report on the 250th anniversary, I know it stands out as a big number, but I think what we got to understand in this this is a once in a lifetime event. This is never going to happen in our lifetime again. This is 250 years, so it is a big event. It's very important to this township. It should be important to us. So I think it deserves a good hard look and a good hard decision on this. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but it's for our community, and as Manager Falk said, it's going to be a lot of other people outside this community too. So we want to shine and we want to show off our community when we do these events. So I think that money may be well spent by doing these projects that they have listed in there.
Okay, moving forward, item number 4, advertise for seasonal positions for Parks and Recreation and Public Works. We would like to have that on a motion to advertise for those positions next month or next week to get a jump start on this right away, because we have a lot of work to do. Moving on to an intern for a local government academy. No action is needed at this time. I'm going to submit a grant application to them so we can get an intern. If it's they pay for 50% of the salary. If that grant is awarded, we would have to do a budget revision. Well, I'm going to add that budget revision for next month's meeting, just in case. It will only be about $5,000 to $10,000 for one intern, and they would be doing a lot of focus with our planning and zoning department. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Item number 6, discussion for an accountant manager. As you know, we do have 2 positions. The one does our accounting and the other one does our payroll. We should start to transition to create a finance department. So this would be the first step of starting to create a finance department with a department head, which would be an accountant manager, a first line manager. This would be a full-time salary position. It would be posted internally first to see if we had any interested applicants from the municipality, and if we did not, then it would go to outside. The salary range, we can set that, but at next week's meeting via resolution, but the salary range I was anticipating was between $65,000 and $75,000 for that salary range. Then once we have a candidate, we can narrow down the pay. This would be a non-union position, full-time with a salaried, so no overtime. Are there any questions about that position?
So it will be an additional employee, correct?
We do not know that yet. It would be advertised internally first for a period of 10 days. If we do not receive, if
a candidate internally takes that position, then we would be faced with hiring somebody to replace that position. Is that right?
No, we would not have to replace that position because a lot of these, the majority of these duties will be, fall under this manager's position and some supervisory as well to supervise the payroll department.
So you're asking for internal candidates, which are union positions, to take a management job and then not replace that person.
We have other employees in the municipality that are non-union that could also apply for that job if they would like. I do not know what the candidate pool would be.
Right, but theoretically, if a union position took it, then you would have to backfill that position.
No, we do not under the management rights of the CBA. We can abolish that position if we need to or not fill it. We have the right to direct our workforce and the right to determine how many employees are needed in that position or department.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Are there any existing non-union employees who could be tasked to do the finance position?
I would have to survey the skill sets of the current employees that we have to see if that would be feasible.
Because you would have the ability to direct any non-union employee to do the financial work, correct?
Correct, but that is such a technical skill set. You would want somebody that has that experience, training, and knowledge. That is not an entry-level position.
So the duties that this person would have to do basically be basic bookkeeping?
No, I did provide a job description. It would do the invoicing, accounts payable, accounts receivable, create a segregation of duties, handle our audits, the pension funds. The list can go on and on.
So how many people how many employees in the township right now have accounting ability?
As far as I know, 2.
Okay, is it possible to survey the employees to find out if they do have accounting ability before we make this decision?
That would have to be a legal question. I don't know if that might get into discrimination. I'm not 100% sure.
Do we have resumes from when people were originally hired?
I can look at their personnel files, but who knows how long they've not been updated.
Okay. And the reason I ask that, if there's somebody already on staff that could be directed by you to perform this function, then why would we hire somebody to do that? But that's all I need to know is an answer to that question.
Because this is such a technical skill level, there's so much involvement with accounting, I'm sure, as you are aware.
Yes, I am.
Right now, right now, we currently have multiple departments doing their own invoicing. We recently purchased an invoicing module, so that way everything comes out of the finance, out of the administration. There's so many pieces of the puzzle, there's so many pieces, so many components to the wheel, to the cog. As we have a lot of things going on, we really need a manager in the finance department to give authority to other employees to direct them for payroll, invoicing, accounts receivable, creating a more detailed segregation of duties.
And as a manager, you can't delegate, you can't ask someone to do a particular job.
I can, yes. However, I'm not a parks expert. I'm not an engineering expert. I rely on experts with my decision makings. We come together and do it as a team.
Thank you.
I would just, Manager Falk, just a question on it, kind of in the same line. If you would get an employee that's already employed here to do some of these tasks, the financial accountant manager, they would be doing the accountant manager task, plus they would still be doing their current task, correct? You'd be double tasking that person.
It would depend on who the applicant is and if they were the successful candidate.
Yeah. No, I don't mean it. But I said if we do, that was in response to Virginia's question. She was asking if we could task people already on the payroll with doing this job.
Well,
But if you do that, they're gonna be doing this job and their other job, correct? You understand what I mean?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Which could be overwhelming to somebody, I think. If you look at the job description which was provided to us, it's a whole page of job description. It's not just one or two things. And I think putting that on somebody's plate that already has a full job description here is gonna be too much for one employee to handle.
But then the question becomes, if you don't have to backfill that person, that you're hiring internally, you're not backfilling, then, what happens there anyways? So, would be my question.
About 95% of those job duties, we do have, 1.5 people doing it, I would say. Or 1.25.
Any other questions on that? Go ahead, Rick.
It sounds to me like the possibility exists that we sound like we're going to take a management person and have them do duties that were previously being done by union and clerical staff. And if you take tasks out of the union, that historically has been a problem. So if you're going to hire a manager to oversee all those tasks, then you're actually adding a person to the payroll.
The township has every authority to change the game. There are laws that say that we have the right to change that. Making your
And
point
there is
mute.
a collective bargaining agreement in place also. And historically, I will say, I have seen this happen in North Huntington.
Any other questions? Okay, you can continue,
I
Manager
can get
Falk.
some clarification from the solicitor after the meeting.
Let me make a couple comments. What I hear when I see the term accountant manager, you're really talking about almost a controller. And this person, I would assume, I haven't seen the description, but I would think that this entity person is going to try to standardize and uniform the various departments in their payrolls and their expenses, et cetera, and lend some assistance to the manager, I guess, with the budget. I don't know, it smells like that's a full-time job. It doesn't sound like that's something you can do and also perform my secretarial duties or whatever else you might be doing for the township. Rich makes the point about you can't take bargaining unit work and give it to a non-bargaining unit employee because we're going to get a grievance if that happens. But I think standardizing the departments and doing general controlling work is something that you certainly could identify with an employee. I don't know if I'm helping or not, because I see this as more of a full-time job than a part-time job, but I could be wrong, I don't know.
Yes, you are helping, Bruce, and I appreciate it. I tried to raise this question earlier that I don't think this should have been on the public agenda at this time because all the aspects of it have not been looked at through the lens of legality and collective bargaining. But it fell on deaf ears.
All right, well, I think Harry's ready to go back to the drawing boards and take a look at this. And let's further define what it is that he's searching for.
Rich, did you ask someone for that not to be placed on the agenda?
Pardon me?
He sent an email after the fact, after it was on the agenda. I mean, you just made a comment that you asked for that not to be on agenda, but it fell on deaf ears.
No, I did not say. I said I raised the issue of it should have been on the executive session discussion. And I'm not in charge of the agenda. The the president is. And the president could have noticed that with his 13 years of experience and having been through the same things I have and made the decision to take it off. That didn't happen.
Okay, my question, what I was asking is, did you ask prior to? You sent an email asking why it was on the agenda after the agenda was out, just to clarify.
Yes, that's the first. Did we talk about that before? Was it on anything? Until I see the agenda, how would I know to take it off?
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Manager Falk, we can move on.
Moving on to item number 7, Troy Pacina and Eric Berg, both North Huntington Township police officers, will complete their probationary period. There is no action needed at next week's meeting. The next, item number 8, is Civil Service Commission to develop a new eligibility list for entry level and sergeant positions. For the Civil Service Commission to get that started, there needs to be action taken at next week's meeting to authorize them to create that list. Moving on to item number 9, Calvary Church, North Huntington Township Police Department Community Outreach Program. I'll turn it over to Chief Rizzo.
All right, thank you all. We'll be brief. We had started discussions in late fall last year and started to kind of put a plan together. We reignited our discussions in the beginning of this year, had some meetings, and I think we came up with a framework, and that's what we wanted to kind of present to you tonight, and how we think this can work and how we think this can benefit to the community. And it's a partnership, but it's independent of one another. So right next to me today is Ian DeFore. He's with Calvary Assembly Church, and then Pastor Nick, everybody's familiar with him in the back. We've had our meetings with him also. So basically what this is they have people that are trained under critical incident response, and they have a critical incident team. And what we have in our department is we deal with, obviously, critical incidents. We deal with suicide, we deal with family death in home, we deal with overdose deaths, fatal car crashes, all the things that our officers engage in. Some of the things that our officers do, they do very well when they're on scene, but it's very limited time that we spend with them. And how we feel that this partnership can work, and I'll let them talk a little bit after I'm done, is that we won't be bringing them with us. So they're not connected to the police department or the township. They're like an independent entity. But we can provide that service, we can provide that information to the family members at the scene. And if they request it, if they say okay, we can notify them. They have a 24-hour on call, and then they can actually respond to the house, and they can provide short-term relief to the families that are grieving, that have just had loss. Our officers then can continue to do their job and then clear the scene when appropriate, with comfort knowing that we have someone in place to help these families through these tough times, and then eventually even maybe move them towards some maybe longer term care if the family needs that. So that's kind of the premise of it. We looked at it as a good relationship between the two. We're not working with each other, but we are working with each other. It would be like a community outreach group. We would just be providing the information. If the family members don't want it, we would not make the phone call, and the support would not be provided. So you want to talk a little bit about what your organization does?
Yeah, so basically what we would do is be like the cushion between first responders and the victims, right? You know, in these types of scenes, very chaotic. Victims could be Russian law enforcement, Russian firefighters, Russian EMS, getting in the way of them performing their duties. So we would be kind of that cushion between that. Everyone would be certified in at least a level 1 critical care capacity. We do have further educated people as well, where they are actual counselors and so on and so forth, so they have higher education. The big thing that Chief touched on would be the next level care. So we don't want to rise above what we're capable of, but we would also be able to offer that next level care throughout 4 or 5 maybe different organizations that offer that next level counseling, so on and so forth. So, but the biggest thing would be responding in regards to if there's family and friends there that would be causing, I don't want to say more chaos, but in that type of a situation, it is chaotic. So we would kind of be that buffer, and that's kind of like where we would be at with that situation.
And then, you know, and what we could do is we would build back-end infrastructure on it. So we would get their call-out notifications. They would provide us with their documents on what they would want us to hand, either it's a card or a flyer.
Right.
that we would be able to give to a family member there and make a recommendation, and it would be at their request. It would be the family's request, and then we would just have our dispatch make that follow-up notification to their 24-hour on-call, and then they can send their on-call out to assist us on the scene. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. It's not a very complicated program, but I think it's a beneficial program. And it's the first time really that we've had, any type of outreach like this, that we can provide that extra care to the people. And there is a need for it. All the things that I talked about just briefly right here on this, we deal with all of these, and we do all of these frequently. So it will be a program that will have practical application. There's no doubt about it. So, any questions?
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to make a statement. I'll keep it brief. I say that with a smile on my face because we were down at Queen of Angels, just a little bit backstory on it that I'll try to keep brief. So it was a great invitation. We all went down to the Queen of Angels and had a beautiful time. And, I think somebody introduced me. We were sitting up there on the thing, and I just gave the kids a thumbs up and a, hey, thanks a lot. And, of course, at the end of the show, Chief Rizzo comes over to me and says, man, that is the shortest you've ever spoken. So now Chief and I have a code for Eric, QOA, Queen of Angels. In other words, when I hear chiefs tell me that, it means to keep it short. So I'm going to try to keep it short, QOA. For 18 years, I've been conducting military funeral honors for the Department of Army, Department of Defense. I've conducted over 3,200 funerals in my 18 years of service to the military funeral honors team. In that time, we have always gone out with a notification officer of the death of a soldier with a chaplain beside us, a chaplain, a rabbi, spiritual guidance. And I'm here to tell you, in 18 years of facilitating our chaplaincy, the rabbis and so on and so forth, religious personnel, it has been wonderful. It has worked immensely for the family, and I am a proponent of this. Thank you both, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
A couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe this is for Mr. Dufour. How many people are on your team, and what kind of training do they have?
So right now we have 6. My training personally is all the way through a level 3 first responder chaplaincy program. Most all of our training has been conducted by Christ in Action, which is a faith-based first response organization. They are written into the FEMA response organization for our federal government. They are the only faith-based first response organization written in there. So it's not like we're just, getting a YouTube video and figuring out how to do this stuff. They're a very great organization. We also have some other individuals that are, like I said, full-time counselors. So they are through the whole way through master psychology programs and so on and so forth. And then pastoral care, obviously, with our pastors as well. So there is a legitimate certification program within each individual. They may not all have that next level as our counselors will have. However, that's not where we lie. We lie in that first response, that cushion, to help them victims at the scene. Next level is next level. And that's it. And next level doesn't happen in 24 hours. It doesn't happen in 48 hours. It happens over weeks. It happens over months, because chaos lasts and everyone's different. Everyone's situation is different. So we don't want to step beyond those boundaries except in the first response area. But we are also looking into being recertified on other things too as well. So we're in the process of getting some certain individuals together for that. But those are the organizations that we have had training through, and they are legit. So, yeah.
Just to put some letters to what he's saying, the actual certification is ICISF. ICISF is recognized broadly, not just from religious organizations. So, Christ in Action is a religious organization that we did our certification through, but it's not a religious certification, if that makes sense. No, it's okay. Our goal and aim of this team isn't to be a religious team. We are all part of the church, of course. It's not our aim to proselytize or anything like that. With the team, we're there to care for people in the moment. That's critical incident care. We have counselors on the team, but we are not trying to counsel. We will have a list of professional next steps for them that we can refer out. We're not going to go beyond that one incident. And for our team, we have a process set up where any team members that go on scene will be required to meet with a professional counselor following their visit on scene before they can be on call again, just to care for them and their own well-being as well. So we're trying to kind of cover all of our bases. But everyone on the team will have an ICISF certification before they can ever go on scene. This isn't willy-nilly, we're just shooting from the hip. You have a heart for people, let's send you out there. We want to make sure that they're certified, they're legitimate, and that we can properly care for people. And I also want to just mention, I really respect Chief Rizzo's heart and view to see the gap. The gap wasn't a procedural gap, the gap was a people gap. And I think that speaks volumes to where our township is, that we aren't just about getting the job done, we're here to care for the people who reside here. And I think that's a huge, huge thing. As a pastor, I care about that, and it's awesome to live in a community where those in leadership also care about that. So that's all I'll say.
You realize your acronym is CIA, right?
Yep. Well, that's their acronym.
That's theirs.
That's their acronym.
That's their that's not our
their
acronym yet.
Yeah.
I think this is a great program, especially in times of crisis, that this is going to be offered. My question is this going to cost the police department
Nothing.
any money, any agreement? Okay.
Nothing. No, there's no cost to us. The officers will appreciate the help at the scene, especially, they get involved in these, and they spend a lot of time with families on
So
the scene. And
this is strictly them volunteering?
this is them, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
During
So it's
times of
strictly
crisis?
volunteers. We're paying for the certification, for them to go through the training and certification. So we're covering all of that. There's absolutely no cost to the township.
Okay.
This is simply a relationship that's not formal.
Right.
However, a relationship where we want to just serve our community. That's our heart. We just want to help our community serve, but we want to do it legitimately. So yeah, no
That's
cost.
awesome. Thank you.
No cost, and like I said, they're not going to be attached to us. They will just be an option for us. And if the people say no, then it's no. And we'll make it available to them, and then they can make the decisions in those moments. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Great job.
One more real quick.
Go ahead, Jason.
Do we have you have any intention on doing this internally with officers? If any of them need the service, can they? I mean, you guys see incredible things on a day-to-day basis. I just want to make sure.
I wouldn't talk right now about what we do internally and how we handle our officers after, a critical incident, but
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, and we have not even explored conversations like that yet.
Okay.
We've spent, with this team in particular, we've spent most of it talking about the outside. So, but I haven't even discussed that with them.
Sure. I just worry about the mental health of,
I
the
completely
people in blue
understand.
here.
I worry about it also.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 10, the police vehicle purchase. You have with you several quotes. There's going to be a CoStar price of $37,910 for each vehicle. This will be paid out of the Capital Reserve Fund. So you have that on your agenda for next week.
I'd like to make a comment about that. The last time we purchased a police cruiser, we approached car dealers in North Huntington to see if they could meet or beat the lowest price of a bid of someone that's outside the township. And that was successful, and I would hope that we would do that again.
Well, there's two options. One, purchase it through the CoStar's price where the state has already done the contracting, the bid, and all that other jazz. Where if we were to do it, we would have to design, take these specs, advertise, put it out for bid. We just can't go to Kenny Ross across the street, say we need a 2023 Ford Police Interceptor. We just can't do that.
I think we did that with Shorkey a couple years ago. We went to them.
Yeah, Shorkey is on the list at 39,150.
Yeah, I think, but I think in the past, though, we went to them and they knocked a couple more thousand off for us.
Well, we just can't go do that right now. We'd have to put out a bid. You would have to, I mean, we'd have to go through the whole bidding procedures. That's,
We did that before, though, not too long
so,
ago.
so what does the board want to do?
You shouldn't.
Okay.
You understand
Okay.
that purchasing by the township has to be done through public bid or through CoStarz. You can't get a CoStarz bid and then turn to one of your local people and say, hey, can you meet or beat the price? That would be in conflict with the public bidding requirement.
Yes. Thank you, Solicitor.
And the other question, I know some of the newer cars are lacking some of the features of some of the older cars because of the lack of chips. And can we just make sure that the car that we're buying has all of the amenities that we're used to having in a car?
Yeah, these cars are to the design specs of the police department.
Do we have any luck getting any grant money for?
We should know in March of next year, or, I'm sorry, no, next month, we should know, yeah.
Or they could go to Long John Silver's and get fish and chips.
No.
Oh,
All right.
come on, you guys missed that. It's good. I sat here and thought about it for 5 minutes. All right, I withdraw.
Moving on to item number 11, lowering the pay of commissioners to $1,200 per year. This was requested to be put on the agenda by Commissioner Atwood.
I feel like we talked about this a lot, putting the money where my mouth is, and I want to pursue some action and possibly lowering the pay. As I've said before, I do recognize the fact that there are some costs to us as part of our position. That's why I didn't take it the way down to nothing, as I originally wanted to. But I think 1,200 is a fair number. It allows us to put money back into the general fund, and it's also comparable to our, I believe it's Murraysville, that is also at 1,200, and they seem to be the municipality we get compared to the most in this area. So I think it's a fiscally responsible thing to do. You know, our companions on the school board don't get paid anything. I just think that we all talk about being fiscally conservative and looking for drops in the bucket to save money. And I think this is the place we should start first with our own salary.
Jason, I think what you bring up is noble. I really, really do. But I will tell you, over the years of being in this position, I have donated a lot of my township commissioner's money.
Yeah, I donate as well.
Yeah,
Fire departments,
a lot.
anytime there's a fundraiser for anything.
And no offense to the township and anybody else that sits in the other wards, and I'm not trying to better anybody, please understand that. So I do, you know, I was elected by the people, my constituents in Ward 7. I donate much of the money back to them when I see they need help and assistance. But that, again, is not for me to one-up anybody. That's not what this is about. I just don't want to see that taken away from my folks, because it will impact them. It really will. And, you know, it's very noble. Honest to God, I really think it is. It's noble what you say. But that's my side of it. But thank you.
Item number 12, term limits, no more than 2 consecutive terms. This was requested to be put on the agenda by Commissioner Atwood.
Let me try to help with this a little bit. This is another noble thing. The problem is, the first-class township code describes how you as boards of commissioners get elected. And it takes precedent over any attempt by you to change that process, except if you decided to go home rule. If you became a home rule community, you could set term limits, just as you've indicated on here. But without that, you're not really obliged or permitted to change the first-class township code on how you get elected. And it sets out in great detail how you go about getting elected to the Board of Commissioners. And there's no language in the first-class township code that permits you to set term limits. But you could do it if you were home rule. So, and that's a bigger concept, but it's something that if you really want to go down that road, you'd almost have to put together a committee of sorts to decide. I mean, there's all kinds of home rule charters and requirements, and it's something that would take more than a night to decide on.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, it is illegal to put in term limits.
I think that's a good way to say it. You're not permitted to put term limits on, you as the board.
Everyone call your state representative and let them know.
Yeah, and sure, that's the way to do it, because and it's the same for the borough code, the second-class township, the first-class township code. So, and if you want to change it, you've got to change your system of government.
And if we're going to start from the bottom up, township, I recommend term limits to the state and to the feds. 2 terms, everywhere, across this great nation. 2 terms and you're out. I think it's only right. And I
We
think
have no standing on that. We're going to move on.
Well, that's it.
We're going to move on.
Thank you, Vice President.
Item number 13, waiver request for Get-Go Car Wash. Mr. Fonzie will have more in detail on this.
Yeah, this is the Get-Go Car Wash that the board approved in November of 2022. And the applicant thought that they had received a waiver request approval and a modification approval, and they did not. That did not make it into the original resolution. So this is the site next to the AutoZone that's actually going to be, the building is going to be permitted fully in Irwin Borough. So the municipal boundary kind of cuts off the corner of the building. The majority of it sits in Irwin. But the one waiver that they were asking for from the SALDO is from section 511.5, which states the minimum width of island shall be 10 feet. And I've highlighted the island in question in green. And this abuts the building, and actually only a portion of it is in North Huntington, but they're going to reduce it down to 9.2 feet instead of 10 feet to make the site work with the front setback from Route 30, and there's a retaining wall in the back. So they're a little bit tight on space. So they are asking for that waiver to construct the building as designed. And then the other modification, actually waiver, is from our stormwater management ordinance, section 307.c.3, which states the volume control best management practices shall be used to maintain existing hydraulic conditions for small storm events. I don't understand a word that says, but what it does mean is that this site is built on fill, so they feel that the infiltration and percolation would not be steady as if it were virgin ground. So they're going to design their testing to DEP standards. Bob, please help me because this is out of my element. But that's the reason, is because the site's on fill. They can't do particular infiltration testing as if it were virgin ground. So they're asking for that waiver from our stormwater management ordinance. And our engineer, KU Resources, was okay with both of those requests. And I can amend the resolution for next week that you'll vote on this and include the prior conditions with these 2, one waiver and 1 modification. Any questions on that?
I do. What percentage of this Get-Go Car Wash is Irwin Borough, and what percentage is North Huntington Township?
Well, there's an intergovernmental agreement between the two, and they have taken over permitting for the entire building.
Who's they?
Irwin. And
Okay.
we, North Huntington, have taken over permitting for the entire retaining wall that's in the rear. So we handled the permitting and review for that, and Irwin got the building.
Okay.
But in reality, there's just a small corner of this building that sits in North Huntington So the majority was in Irwin, so it kind of went that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 14, a resolution for plan revision for the new land development of the Legends Plan Phase 3, revision number 3.
And this is a standard procedure with the full planning module. This was a subdivision that was approved over 2 years ago, and they just are now getting to their sewage planning. So the plan has not been recorded yet. I've been holding on to the Mylars, but this is part of the paperwork. So this resolution comes with a full planning module because the property exists in the WWMA watershed, and that's a requirement by DEP. So that resolution will need to be signed by the board next week, and then I submit that with the application to DEP for them to review and ultimately approve the sewage planning module. Any questions?
That's Legends 3.
Legends 3, Revision 3, there was a couple sewer taps that freed up. This was a subdivision that they needed 2 taps, but then last year there was a consolidation that freed up another tap. So now instead of going for 2 taps, they just need the 1 tap. So it's one of the single-family attached lots on Elliott Lane.
All right, item number 15, KU Resources Engineer Proposal. I'll turn it over to our engineer, Bob Robinson.
Thank you, Harry. We have considerable obligations under the township's current NPDES permit with DEP. Just MS4, our pollution reduction program, which is just part of it, we're required to spend about $6 million to reduce the pollutions created by stormwater.
Hey, Bob, is your mic on?
It shows it's on.
Did you grab the other mic?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can't either. Thank you.
It's coming up, it's on.
Okay. How about this one? Okay. How about I'll start over. We have considerable obligations that the township does under our current NPDES permit.
Would you move that mic back over? It sounds like you're in a dead area. It was working better over there. I'm sorry to ask you.
I think you just need to put it closer to your mouth, maybe.
Pretty close. Okay, I'll get closer. Can you?
That's
okay.
better.
I got cord. One more time. North Huntington Township has considerable obligations under the our current NPDES permit. About $6 million that we're required to spend to reduce the pollution load on our stormwater, and that's based on our permit that was granted. I think it was 2019, and that's considerable cost. One of the projects is retrofitting of existing detention basins. And we have 4 in Lincoln Hills we'd like to start with. I asked our consulting engineers, which is KU Resources, to submit a proposal. And I'm recommending acceptance of their proposal, $34,080, which includes existing conditions, erosion sedimentation control plan, design bid documents, and construction observation. We feel that their costs for construction observation, we're going to split the costs, and some is going to be in-house and some done by them. In addition, I recommend just for this year of transfer of $500,000, or some of it might be from that we already have budgeted, to transfer to a separate stormwater fee to start the process. As you recall, back in January, we looked at adopting a stormwater fee and working toward that. Unfortunately, there was a challenge, and we put that on hold probably for the rest of the year. And hopefully by the end of the year, going to next year, we can make a decision. Is this going to be a fee or a tax? It has to be something. I mean, our obligations don't go away. So my recommendations for this year is to start off with Lincoln Hills, the detention ponds retrofitting, and get KU on board to do the initial design and get it started. And we may have another project later this year to fit in maybe some stream bank stabilization. So I'm estimating around $500,000.
So you'll have that proposal for, on the agenda for next week. Item number 16, the 2023 milling and resurfacing contract.
I'm going to show my age. I've been a municipal engineer over 40 years, and probably don't need to tell you, these are unprecedented times, and the bids that we received are unprecedented. If we go back and compare Liberoni's Incorporated's bid from last year to this year, unit prices went up 41%. I mean, it's astronomical. And actually, the liquid index, I have some numbers here. When we bid our contract last year, the liquid index was $528 a liquid ton. And eventually, when we actually applied the asphalt in August and September, it went to $770. But it's been falling, and that is good news for somewhat. And this February, it come down to $594, a substantial drop. However, our prices went way up. It's basically an inflation, and particularly diesel fuel. Back in February of 2022, diesel fuel was around $3.30 a gallon. Now, it's $5. Our liquid fuels, when we go to the gas pump and get gas or diesel fuel, and because the price is going up, the gas tax is a flat tax, and we don't get any more. So we get very little difference in liquid fuels from PennDOT that manages that for us and cuts us a check. So if we just use liquid fuels, we just keep having to do less and less, and our road system can't handle that. I designed the actual bids this year for a base bid and add alternates to make sure that we can do at least everything in the base bid. And if we look at the milling and resurfacing plus the FiberMat contract, those combined are about $987,000. Our liquid fuels is just $1,020,000. Did have the three roads on the add alternates: Marion Drive, Rebecca Street, and Lancelot Drive. And those are three roads that are all close to some of the roads on the base bid, and they're all D-rated roads. I would like, given we got an excellent price from Tresco, but they left $187,000 on the table, and that's an extreme amount to leave on the table. I think that the reason Tresco was able to be more competitive than we thought is they're the only contractor on the bidders list that produces asphalt. Not all the other four have to buy elsewhere from Adamsburg, Derry, or another plant. So I was really surprised to see how much further lower they were than the other contract. But if we look at the base bid plus the three alternate roads, the two combined bids are $1,229,000 and some change. But that's still only doing 5.6 miles of road. If we would prorate the unit costs this year, we should be doing 8 miles of roads. If we take these unit costs and prorate them over 8 miles, it's $1.76 million. And I'm really concerned about next year, because I don't think we're going to see a big difference between the first and second, because Tresco's going to look at their bids, and they're going to go up. They don't want to lose money, of course. So if I project next year's costs, we're going to be over $2 million. And with just a little over $1 million in liquid fuels, I will be recommending to you for next year the supplementing liquid fuels with an additional $1 million. And don't want to just take it from fund balance. There should be a sustained effort, sustained funding stream, so we could properly manage our roads. And that's doing 5% of the roads, 20-year life cycle. It's going to cost over $2 million, based on what I would project for next year. And I will tell you, a 20-year life cycle is a long time. It's very difficult to maintain a road in western Pennsylvania for 20 years. And I don't think I need to tell you that. So my recommendations for this year is to award the base bid plus the alternate bid to Tresco Paving, a total of $1,094,337, and to award contract the fiber mat to Russell Standard, $134,880, and do an amendment to transfer $250,000 to the general fund. Otherwise, there's a line item, a paving escrow line item. I would transfer it to that. So I know it seems like a lot, but I think that's what we need to do. But we can get by for this year, but looking ahead to next year, I think we need to do this.
Thank you.
So to echo what Bob said, there'll be a budget amendment resolution for next week's meeting for consideration that will reflect some increased revenue, some decreased expenditures, and adding the 250th celebration and only transferring over $400,000 from the general reserve to the general fund to pay for this stuff.
I just have a question for Bob. Do we coordinate with utilities before we do a paving project? Because I see First Street in Westmoreland City just totally torn up from the gas company doing work.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As soon as we have our paving program determined and approved, there's like 28 letters that I sent out that typically go out in December. And some of the utilities, there's three or four people that I send it to, and I say in the letter, if this isn't the person that's in a responsible charge, please get this information to that person. And I think a lot of them, it's just fallen on deaf ears sometimes. Some respond, most don't. But if they do come back, then we have our specific restoration requirements. We can require them, if they touch that road, 25 feet on both sides of the disturbance and full width. A lot of times we'll just not require full width, but at least a full lane restoration. We have a very strong ordinance what's required.
That's what's needed on First Street, restoration, because they made a mess out of it.
Yeah, it's but things happen. I think it was Malt Drive. We did about 6-7 years ago, and I left the job site, and an hour later the water line blew up. It sometimes just a matter of hours, but you know we try to do our best. Like I said, I think it's up to 28 letters that I send out, and we do our best to not to see utilities come, but it happens. But if it does happen, there's pretty strict standards that we require.
Any other questions? Anything else, Manager Falk?
That is all I have, Vice President.
Thank you. And moving on, planning engineering topics, Director Fonzie.
There is one subdivision that came through the Planning Commission this week. Subdivision 1 of 2023, the Gongaware subdivision. And this lot that you're looking at is Lot 2 of the Gongaware-Zawadney plan that was approved in February of 2021. It's an odd lot. It spans First Street and has frontage on Pennsylvania Avenue as well. But it's also non-conforming because there are 2 homes and a barn on this lot. You're not allowed to have 2 dwellings on a zoning lot. So Charles and Lynn Gongaware would like to subdivide one of the houses and keep it with a barn. So this configuration here, the house at 7899 Pennsylvania Avenue on the corner there, would remain on a lot with the barn on the western side of First Street. And then the blue, as you can see, would be the rest with the other house, which is addressed at 219 First Street. There's a close-up of what's happening. So we did ask that the two yellow portions are touching, so even though it goes through First Street, which does happen, it's not very common, but you do see some lots that span a road. So those lots actually are touching per the surveyor. They actually closed those points, so it is one lot, Lot 2A. So that'll be 2.19 acres, and the other lot will just be, let's see, a little bit over 4.73 acres will be the blue lot. So both lots meet the dimensional requirements for the R2 district. And since there was existing houses and we're doing a subdivision, both homes had a legal sewer connection, so they don't need to do any further sewage planning. So NHTMA okayed this subdivision as well. Any questions?
I was gonna ask you on that, Director Fonzie, just what you said, how do those connect in the middle there, the yellow lot? So do they own that? I mean, they obviously don't own that road.
Well, a lot of the older surveys on older roads, particularly state roads, the survey and the actual lot line goes to the center line of the road. You'll see a lot of surveys drawn up that way. Robin Station Road has a lot, Clay Pike has a lot. So in this case, the meets and bounds actually went to the center line of the road for what this surveyor did. However, the lot in its entirety had spanned the road before. So I don't know if the lot existed before First Street. That's my guess. And so here we are with just the residual lots as they get further subdivided.
I work with a lot of farms, and back in the day, a lot of these roads were dirt roads, and there was the Altman Farm, which is now Altman Farms. And it's very common to see the farmhouse on one side of the road and the barn on the other side.
And I believe Shawty Hill Road has the road splitting the lot. That's actually one lot where their land is, but Shawty Hill Road, and it probably started as a small farm road.
It's very common to see that. I wouldn't have even thought, I see, Ryan, that you had asked them to put that little diagonal piece in there. I wouldn't have probably required that, but I can see why the township did that, to just show a little connection.
Make sure it's a contiguous lot. That's why we asked for the land hook.
Yes, yeah, that's nice.
Okay, and then the other item was the rezoning that we had the public hearing for, and Commissioner Zona just wanted me to just quickly summarize the memo that I had given to the board in your packets, and it's just purely facts on what this rezoning is requesting. And this property, this 95.54 acres, represents 11.1% of all industrial land in the township. North Huntington is comprised of 78.1% residential and only 4.9% industrial. So it is a district that we don't have a lot of. And another concern that came up is if this were to be rezoned, we're leaving the Horseman property that I believe the owner was here and spoke tonight in the red circle there. That's now an isolated floating piece of industrial property, not touching any other industrial property. So that's not the best zoning practice when you're creating a zoning map. And then the taxes came up quite a bit, and that's the bottom graph. And what I did was I took actual properties from Westmoreland County's GIS website. They list the taxes on there. And so that's a real industrial facility in North Huntington Township on 20.93 acres, and they're bringing in $106,000 in tax total, over $11,000 to the township. And then a single-family home, also in a rural area on 40 acres with an on-lot sewage system, they're bringing in just over $4,000 total, with $429 going to the township. So there is a tax discrepancy. I mean, if there were to be something put on this industrial land, I would never say never. I mean, never is a dangerous word. It could be developed next year, it could be developed 50 years, but the point is that it's industrial now, and that's the potential revenue that we could get from it. Anybody have any questions on that?
What is the current revenue we get from it? Do we know?
From the vacant piece?
Yes.
I think they said it was $1,000 in taxes, but I don't think the township would see it. We'd see a couple hundred of that maybe, if that. I'm not sure. I did not check what that revenue was.
Ryan, this particular piece of property, if they go to build on it, build anything on that, if anybody goes to build anything on it, because of the floodplain down below, is there going to be anything that they're going to have to be required to do to prevent additional water from going into the flood zone for MS4?
I mean, there are different requirements per the UCC of things that they would have to do, but I highly doubt that you'd be putting a structure anywhere near on that side of the property. I mean, there is a topographic challenge with this lot, and I think the sweet spot is where they're putting their houses, but that's still a fairly sizable area.
Okay, so no MS4 impact that you can foresee. I see that goes down a hillside, and so much development occurs that impacts the flood zones.
Well, even if it's a single-family home, Bob, I'm sure they'd be over 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. They'd have to do a small project on-lot stormwater system.
Whether it's industrial or residential, you still need to have a stormwater management plan.
Yeah.
And so you can't generate any more water than what you're discharging. So it'd have to be at least equal to or less than what you're discharging. So I don't think there would be any impact on the floodplain.
And from what I could see with the photos, there seemed to be a lot of slippage on that soil, probably because it's mine spoil. Is there anything that the township would have any control over or want to investigate before somebody builds a house on that site?
I mean, it's private property.
So we're not concerned about them building a house and then having like a subsidence?
That falls to the builder if they need to drill down and put it on pylons or put a spread footer in. That's for the builder, and then we issue the permit, assuming that it passes those tests.
I would think, Tom, if McGuire, if there's a concern about a geotechnical concern, he would require the builder to provide a geotechnical report evaluation, and whether they have to do some drillings or do some test pits on the site where the house is before he would issue a permit.
I just didn't want to see us approve something that would put that family in jeopardy if there's already subsidence there and, we could see the photos.
If there's known unconsolidated fill, like for example, Willow Estates, the plan is full of unconsolidated fill. Fred Crack, the developer, has drilled each lot basically in a grid with core borings, and so that report is submitted with every building permit so that we can verify how deep they would have to drill down a virgin or if they're pouring concrete pylons to see how deep they need to go.
So we are taking some precautions?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else, Director Fonzie?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Old business. Further board comments?
I'd like to speak regarding number 11, Commissioner Atwood requesting to lower the pay for commissioners to $1,200 per year. So I just wanted to share a little bit of statistics with the public and my fellow commissioners. I am against this proposal. Just so everybody knows that it has been 28 years since the Board of Commissioners have had a raise. So the last raise was in 1995. And in the past 38 years, the Board of Commissioners have only had a salary increase of $875. And even before then, from 1985 to 1995, the commissioners made $3,500. We have a $14 million budget. And the fact that we haven't had a raise for 28 years, I don't think that it's out of line to ask my fellow commissioners respectfully to vote no to Commissioner Atwood's proposal. As Commissioner Goss had said, that our salary, his salary helps him donate into the community and participate in a lot of functions that may cost money, and that's the same for me. And if anything, I would like to see a pay increase. Like I said, there hasn't been an increase for 28 years. So I respectfully ask that you vote no to his request. And if you do not support a pay increase, at least let us continue to make the $4,375 that we currently make.
Any other comments under board comments?
Oh, one thing, thank you. In regards to Lindsay's comment, we already discussed this a while ago, and I think it fell flat at that time. And there really won't be there will be no vote unless 4 people move the issue forward. So it won't be on the agenda next week, and it won't be on any agenda for a vote unless 4 people decide it should be there. So I think you're okay. Now, as far as the raise goes, that could be a different subject. You have to get 4 people to get that on an agenda to vote. But you're right, it hasn't been raised in 28 years. It was the same when I got elected in 1998, and it hasn't changed since. And I know Virginia and Eric and you and other people do donate a lot of their money to the community events, and I will say that I routinely sponsor the Chamber of Commerce, although the township doesn't. But thank you.
Commissioner Zona, I would like to make a motion to add it onto the agenda.
Well, I think.
Or do we have to?
Just.
Okay, go ahead.
You've made a
Go
motion.
ahead, Solicitor.
You've made a motion, and the way you've described it is to add the subject of the Board of Commissioners' salaries. Now, that leaves open either an up or down or stay the same. So there's 3 options. Stay the same, raise it, lower it. So if you get a second to that motion, it will be put on the agenda, and next week, you all would decide whether or not you wanted to do any of those 3 things, or it could get tabled. So that there's a lot of options if there's a second to your motion. Is there a second?
Bruce,
Yes,
Bruce,
I'm with you.
wouldn't that be better handled by bringing it to a work session for discussion, and then if there's a consensus to move it to an actual vote? I see we can place anything on the agenda now with your name next to it, like Commissioner Atwood did. Wouldn't it be more appropriate for Commissioner Wengren to say, I would like to see that on the next work session agenda so we can talk about either raising it or lowering it or leaving it the same, and then see if there's a consensus to go one direction. If it's raised it, there would be 4 people at the work session that says, yes, I want to vote on this next week.
Okay, you've asked me a question, correct?
Yes.
The answer to the question is yes. It would be better to do it through the work session, as you described it.
Okay.
As an executive session matter.
However, the solicitor is saying that would be the best way to do it. We have a motion on
You
the
have a
floor.
motion right
If it's seconded and voted on to add it to the agenda for next week's regular
Now,
meeting.
has it been seconded?
It hasn't been. So just to clarify, Commissioner Wengren, your motion would be what? To adjust the commissioner's pay?
I would like to see the commissioner's pay be adjusted.
Okay, the motion is to add,
Open-ended, yes.
to add to the agenda for next week's regular meeting, the commissioner's pay to be adjusted. Is there a second on the motion?
Now, there's two types of adjustments. There's adjustment up or adjustment down.
Correct.
Can we clarify, please?
That,
She's
that-
not, that's what she's not doing.
She's leaving it open-ended for us to discuss and vote how you want to vote. So the motion is to add to the agenda, adjusting the commissioner's salary.
And-
Is there a
and-
second on the motion?
I'm going to second that.
Second.
If it can go up or down, I will second it.
Is there any questions on the motion? Any questions on the motion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
No. Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Commissioner Stump,
Yes.
Commissioner Atwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
No.
Commissioner Goss,
I'm going to say yes.
Commissioner Wingren,
Yes.
Commissioner Zona,
Yes.
President Hagus,
No.
I have 5 yeses and 2 noes.
Motion passes 5-2. That will be added to the agenda for the regular meeting next week.
I have a point of order, please.
Yes.
We didn't vote for any of the other items to be on the agenda next week.
They were not voted on, and we can ask the solicitor, but I believe because they were added to the agenda prior tonight and they were posted as being on the agenda prior tonight, to add something at a late date for next week, I think we needed to vote on it. And we will, I'll defer to the solicitor.
And I think you've summarized it. Let me say this. You get a list from the manager of a work session discussion topics, and they're all on there. And all of those items would transfer over to the next week's agenda. If somebody brings something up new that's not part of the list that the manager has put together and adds it the day of the work session, I think you should get a motion in a second. But if it's on the work session agenda, then it would automatically be on the agenda for next week unless you all agreed not to put it on. So that's a good way to deal with adding things to the agenda. I think adding your names to it, I think that helps. I think if you want something on the agenda, you make sure the manager has it for the work session. If it appears on the work session agenda, it's going to be discussed at the work session, and it's next week. It'll either be voted upon or not voted upon if you decide not to. If you decide you want to add something new the day of the work session, I think you should require that the proponent get a motion and a second to put that on the agenda for next week. And that's what just happened.
Thank you. So that is added to the agenda for next week.
So my question is, the comment that was made about us not voting on the $1,200 resolution, that's, from what I understand, that's going to be on the agenda.
That's on the agenda.
Okay, because someone made a comment that we're not doing that next week, and I just wanted to
I
double
think,
check
I
that.
think all of it.
That was, yes.
All the
every-
options are on the table for next week,
And I also like to,
including the
with-
$1,200.
I also like to withdraw the term limits, considering it is not permissible by our current
Okay.
township code as set forth by the
And
state.
that item will be withdrawn and will not be included next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else under further board comments?
One question. I thought Solicitor Dice had told us maybe a month or two ago, that the way Plum Borough did it, I believe he mentioned them, was at the work session, if there was a consensus, only if there was a consensus would the item move to the voting meeting.
That's right.
And now we're saying everything on the agenda tonight is going to move to the voting meeting, and that's a clear difference.
Well, until you decide that you want, everything you said is correct. I think this board has to decide whether or not they want to, at the work session, if they want to decide not to put something on the agenda, they should be saying, this is an agenda item or it's not an agenda item. But you haven't really adopted that policy yet. That was my comments. If that's what you want to do,
Right.
I think you should adopt a policy.
I think we should adopt that. Yes.
Okay, so Rich is suggesting, and if he makes it a motion, it'll be on the agenda for next week, that we add to our policy on items that the manager brings up to determine whether or not each of them is an agenda item for the following week or it isn't. So how it's done in Plum is the manager describes it and the board president says, this is an agenda item. And if there's no more discussion, it's an agenda item. If somebody says, no, I don't want it to be an agenda item, then there's a preliminary vote taken at the work session to determine whether or not there's 4 votes to put it on the agenda. So let's just take, for example,
That
2023 milling. Bob's reported on it. Agenda item? Yes. That's it. It's on. Unless somebody says, no, I don't want to vote on that. And now you get into the discussion of whether or not it should be on the agenda.
And I think the way it's been handled since I've been on the board is all the topics on here are put through to the regular meeting unless somebody opposes something, and then we discuss it, and that's when we would get the consensus. We have gotten consensus of the board members while I've been on this board, but it was only when somebody brought up an objection to something, to one of these items moving through to the next meeting.
Yeah, Commissioner Zone, I totally would agree with that statement. I don't know where the confusion is here from Commissioner Gray. Usually when we discuss the item, we get a consensus from the board to move it to the regular meeting. So I don't know where the confusion is here.
I don't think there's any confusion. I agree with Commissioner Zona that that's probably been the way it has been since he got on the board, but perhaps he doesn't understand that prior to that, the manager or the president looked around the board and as we were talking about things, saw where everybody stood, and if there was a consensus, it was automatic, and they would comment, I see a consensus on that, there's 4 people who want to move it forward, and if there weren't, for example, well, not to give an example, but if there weren't, then it would, well, I don't hear a consensus, so we'll drop that. But that seemed to work much smoother.
So
yeah, that's what's currently
whatever.
being done.
So you basically got a consensus. When you say you got a consensus of the board, you just looked around and everybody, whoever shook their head or whatever. I mean, I think that's pretty much what
Yeah,
we do. I think that's pretty much what we do now. We look around the table as the item is spoken of and everybody kind of nods and we move on. And if somebody is against it, they speak out.
And I mean, what you're really saying, Commissioner Gray, is you want to take a formalized vote before we'd actually vote on something on the regular meeting, which makes no sense.
No, I don't want to take a formalized vote. I think
Well, that's what you're alluding to.
No, that's not what I'm saying, clearly.
I think we're doing exactly what you're talking about. We are getting a consensus. If nobody
Okay.
objects, we have a consensus and we move on. Anything
Okay.
else under further board comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 7-0. The motion is adjourned at 9:32.